Well, for more on this, Michael Plummer joins us now from Bologna in Italy. He's the NE Professor of International Economics and Director of the Johns Hopkins University School of Advanced International Studies, Europe. Welcome to the program, Michael. Now, the excitement level over the prospect of a partial trade deal really has been rising over the last few weeks, hasn't it? Do you think the US and China will actually clinch a deal this month?
Well, I certainly hope so, and there is reason to be hopeful for this because both the United States and China could use this deal. We found that the global markets are extremely sensitive to the developments in this trade war, and both the U.S. government is, facing an election next year and would very much like to go into it with a sound economic footing. And I think the same is true on the Chinese side. Growth has dipped to 6%. And having a ceasefire in the trade war, or hopefully rolling it back, would certainly be in the Chinese interests as well. So from an economic point of view and a political point of view, I think that both parties see it in their interest to do a deal.
Now, it seems like both sides have conceded that, I guess, a complete end to their bruising trade war really is nowhere in sight right now. But this idea of a partial trade agreement is interesting, isn't it? What could that look like?
Well, right now, the agreement that they're talking about is some purchases of agricultural goods that the U.S. is insisting on. And again, this is partly for political reasons, partly to offset the negative effect that the war has had on agricultural exports. So that would be part of it. I think increased guarantees for investment in the country, which has been a big deal in this on the U.S. side for a long time, not just with the current administration. I think you'll see some commitments there that will be later verifiable in the agreement, as well as some commitments on intellectual property protection. I think that in all these areas, it's in China's interest, and China has the intention to do these things. And if you read the statements from the Chinese government, they really do have a plan. It's just that China wants to roll these things out at its own good time, and the Trump administration is much more intent on having it done sooner rather than later. But I think that eventually this partial agreement will move in the direction where it needs to move. And it's not just the U.S. that has complained about these things. The Europeans as well would be very interested in seeing China make progress in these areas. So I think it's all good.
Yes, you hinted earlier that one reason that Donald Trump might be really pushing for this idea of a phase one trade deal is the fact that he's running for office again next year. Is that the real motivating factor, do you think, or is it also an acknowledgement that perhaps the trade war that he waged is hurting the American consumer, the American corporate sector, and the economy at large?
Well, as an economist, I'm not great at predicting what the political justifications are for these sorts of things, but I do obviously believe that he does realize that the pain at its cost, the American agricultural producers. But I think more, if we look at signals from the Trump administration, President Trump himself looks very carefully at what's going on with the stock market. And he sees that this trade war has been a problem. And so he really would like to see the economy in good shape when he goes into the election year. So I think that it's always difficult to predict what's going on in these negotiations. But I should mention as well that the president likes to think of himself as an excellent deal maker. His famous book is The Art of the Deal. And I think that he sees this trade war as a negotiation that he's been doing. And so we're entering into a new phase of a negotiation that he has planned out.
Up until now, the trade war has only intensified. Even though we've had signs of progress, they've always ended up in more tariffs from both sides. Do you think we've seen an end to that, or could the trade war get even worse?
I think it could potentially get even worse. I think a lot of it will depend on the Chinese side. whether or not they want to wait out, call a bluff, if you will, from the U.S. administration, which I think they did earlier this year. But I think things have become sufficiently serious that they won't do that, and that there won't be a return to this tariff war. But again, there is a certain probability that they could very well do it. I've been saying about how it could be politically in President Trump's interest to score a deal, but again, he doesn't want to seem weak on China in the U.S. These days. And as you know, trade in the U.S. electoral system is never seen very positively, unfortunately. And it's as we go in the election year, being tough on trade often never hurts the contenders. So it's difficult to call, but I'm confident that we won't go back into the trade war that we had previously.
Okay, let's see what happens. Michael Plummer, thank you again for your analysis on Money Talks.
Sure, thanks for having me.